I'm going to admit something. As much as it pains me to actually say it, it's an action that I can say has really fucked my family and myself up for the longest time. Honestly, after the actions that have happened, including the various lawsuits and death threats that my parents continue to receive on a daily basis, it wouldn't surprise me if it's at this point that they had pretty much decided to disown me. To think that something as simple as an animation project with a couple of interesting people would go to 1 to 100 in nearly 2.5 fucking seconds. In regards to one of the most covered up events in cartoon history as well, is really an amazing feat. I'm honestly quite surprised I haven't received the Guinness Book of World Record just for sitting there and actually managing to pull that off alone. I guess the best way to really help you all understand what I'm talking about would be to go back a few years ago. Sure, I could explain what actually happened at that time, but if I did that, it would only provide a lot more questions than answers, so this is pretty much the way that I've decided to go with it. When I had turned 14, I had fully decided that my main desire in life was to be a cartoonist. Well, more specifically, an animator for cartoons. I can't really explain the sudden desire to create and make cartoons and things like that, but if anything, it actually was something that was a great positive in my life. During this time of my life, I had started pushing myself further and further to draw better and better in anything that I could get my hands on. And I even used various other things to help teach me. Art classes, YouTube videos, and even a couple of good books from the store as well. It took me a good few years to actually really start drawing drawing well, but all in all, it was worth it. At least at the time. My parents were actually really supportive and quite proud of my interest at the time, so I never really had much of an issue with keeping up with my drawing skills whenever I needed the free time that I had. In fact, it was actually interesting because my parents even wound up getting me a ton of sets, and even my first drawing tablet, and the one with an actual screen, for my birthday one year. And with that, I wound up doing a lot with it. I did a lot of pieces online, both 2D and digital, so that everybody could see what it was, and give me proper criticism about what I created and help me become better. This continued on for a good while until I started out on my first animation project. It was entitled The Great Sock War, and it was about as dumb can be when it came to what the plot was. In fact, I can't even really remember the plot. That's how dumb it truly was. But even then, when I first created that animation, I was so proud of myself when I did it. It just sparked something within me in a way that just only fueled my desire to just keep on making more. And of course, I did just that. Animating, drawing pictures, and just all out having a good time and making money in the process as well was the main thing that pretty much kept me going on a day-to-day basis. I didn't even have to sit there and find much of a job whenever I grew up and such because, well, I've been pretty successful at what I did. So it's at this point where I know that many of you are wondering where everything started going down the shitter and into the abyss of fecal matter that would forever tarnish my life. I'm getting to that point, just please be patient. The work that I wind up doing was ultimately something that I spent as much time on for a good few years, up until I had graduated high school that year. Around this time, I had actually been having a bit of a dry spell in regards to making what I wanted to make, specifically creativity in of its own self. I didn't have any real request at the moment, and I was sure as hell was not in the mood to sit there and just do a bunch of free stuff, due to the fact that this all took a lot of time and effort. So I decided to check out a couple of cartoon shows on television to try and get some form of inspiration for any kind of new project. That was when I landed onto Cartoon Network, and I found the show The Amazing World of Gumball airing its newer episodes. At first, I was a bit skeptical about the show, as I hadn't seen it at all, but after watching a few episodes over the course of a couple of days, I fell in love with it. The very concept itself was one that honestly made every single ounce of my brain explode with how much creativity the show really put into each and every single episode, and the obvious amount of money that was spent just to make it look as good as it did. But by far the best thing about the show that I loved the most was the characters. to which Gumball Watterson was one of my favorites. His zany ideas, his quick to conclusion attitude, and his just amazing personality, and the fact that he was a cat, just really helped solidify the love that I had for him and the show. So, like with most artists out there in the world, when they first discover something that they're practically obsessed with, I started making a ton of fan art on the show that ranged from simple to cute ones on DeviantArt, to NSFW ones on websites like E621, Fur Affinity, and occasionally Ink Bunny. Although, I don't really go on that latter website too often due to rather some questionable things that's allowed on there. It was a wonderful time for me, but it all more or less came down hard when I had agreed to that one project. Specifically, this was an animated project that a few people on DeviantArt and Fur Affinity were currently in the process of doing. Specifically, it was their own version of Amazing World of Gumball episode that they wanted to make, and they wanted me to be one of the artists and animators for the project. This at the time was not just a huge game changer for me when I did it, but was also a major project that would test my abilities to the fullest extent that I could give, and honestly help prove everything that I had done throughout the years was worth my time and while. So, I accepted their offer, and once the script had been sent in, I began working on it immediately. Now, for anybody wondering, the entirety of the script was one that, well, I would say more or less doesn't exactly fit, well, I wouldn't say how do I put this exactly? It was kind of like an episode of Gumball, but at the same time not. Specifically, the script itself was actually more or less downright bizarre. Basically, the main plot of the episode was for Gumball and Darwin Watterson to find an abandoned house at the end of Elmore City, and find, well, that it's apparently inhabited by a couple of crazy people, and of course these crazy people wind up going off and chasing the two of them until Nicole winds up intervening at the end, beating the crap out of all of them, and, well, pretty much everything just kind of goes out the way that it did. It seemed a little bit like a rather bland concept at first, but I ultimately did it anyway. Maybe there might have been a couple of changes to the script later on if it really went on. So, that's exactly what we all did. It took about a good year or so to get everything properly edited, animated, drawn, and acted, but we all managed to get it ready, and then we wound up publishing it to YouTube. At least, I thought we did. Not too long after the video had been created, it was taken down by Cartoon Network Studios for copyright infringement. A false copyright strike, but nothing really that out of the ordinary, especially for something like this. Thankfully, though, we actually managed to fight against it, and we did win. So it was pretty much back up on YouTube, fully monetized and everything for everyone to enjoy. Then about a week later, it was then taken down again for a rather odd reason. Graphic nudity and sexual violence. That was a rather odd one, especially whenever I was notified about this, because I, and many others who worked on this project, had reviewed this episode over and over again to the point where we knew it like the back of our own hands, and we knew for a full-on fact that there was nothing like that in this episode. Not even any kind of connotations to it. I mean, hell, we even wind up watching it before we even uploaded the thing a couple of times, and, nothing happened. So, of course, we wound up deleting it, and then we wind up checking the footage again, and it just seemed about as normal as it was, and then we wind up re-uploading the thing. And then a week later, the same thing would keep on happening. And this just kept on going on every single time, over and over and over again, to the point where we wind up getting so many copyright strikes that the channel that we had created for that specific video had been taken down permanently. Now, of course, when that happened, confusion had set into me when I was trying to understand what was going on with this film. Why was it continuously getting taken down for wrong reasons? And why is it that whenever we appealed, it would never go through, or it would only just further the strikes? I even remember one time where we uploaded it, tried to fight it, and then we wound up getting two community guideline strikes against it. This didn't make any remote sense, but I think what really continuously screwed me up was when my parents wound up getting a knock at the door one day by the local police department. Why they were there at the time was anything was something that I myself, like I said, had no idea why they were doing this. Why were they even there? Now, maybe it might have been for like a reasoning behind, I don't know, a kid being missing or something like that, but that didn't happen. What did wind up happening, they actually entered into my room. In fact, they bursted into the room with a supposed warrant, and then went in my room, pushed me down to the ground, and then arrested me on the spot for supposed child endangerment and various other fucked up charges that only furthered the confusion that I had, and just... I don't know, actually. Even to this very day, I don't know. But one thing I do know is that I was absolutely shitting bricks at that time. When they cuffed me and they took me to the jailhouse, they proceeded to lock me in my cell for a good hour or so. Well, after processing. I didn't get a phone call, but I was able to get in contact with my lawyer, as he had actually been sent by my parents. When he arrived, he began to tell me what was actually happening to me. He basically told me that the video that I had worked on with a few people on Fur Affinity and DeviantArt had high levels of illegal content placed into a specific scene that was, well, animated by me. If that wasn't bad enough, the people who I worked with had supposedly had ties with various disgusting predators online, and were running an underground pedo service in the form of an animation studio and other things that they were doing, and that this project itself was one of those things that were put into it. And that, since my name had came up as one of the people who had made the artwork and animation for the film in the end credits, I was ultimately targeted and, well, brought here, specifically to the jail for my actions. I wound up asking my lawyer how the fuck was that even possible, given the fact that me and the others who worked on the project had viewed it on multiple occasions and found nothing wrong with it. He told me that he didn't exactly know, as the footage hadn't been shown to him, but that he was going to try and do everything in his power to prove it to the officers and even the court, if it was brought up, that neither I nor any of the people that were working on this thing had anything to do with it, and that it might have been an independent person working on it, or something else for that matter. The actual viewing of the thing wasn't really anything particularly special, to be honest. In fact, I would say it was probably one of the scariest things I had to go through. Not because of the episode, but more along the lines of what I was going through at the time. I was taken to one of the interrogation rooms, handcuffed all the way through, and the officers made me sit down next to a television with my lawyer and my parents present as we watched the whole thing. Now, because of legal reasons, I can't give a full-on description about what the episode had on it, nor can I really go into too much detail, or really any kind of detail about it at all. If I do that, then I'd wind up violating my parole, which I'm currently under, and I would wind up going back to prison. But what I can give is a bit of a vague and quick summary of the contents of the episode and what was on it. So I do apologize that this is kind of disappointing, but I don't want my ass going back to prison. So here's what I can give. The episode began with the homemade intro of the Amazing World of Gumball theme, but a lot more extended and a lot brighter and cheerier than usual. I even remember a couple of voice actors had added their own voices to kind of come up with a catchy little song more or less to go into the background music. Then, once the intro had ended, the scene would go to start up with Gumball and Darwin Watterson walking down the street, talking about a house that they had found while skateboarding across the town. Gumball then proceeds to pop up an idea and then try and convince Darwin to go with him to investigate the place, apparently claiming that there might have been ghosts or something there. To which Darwin completely declines the offer. The pestering continues on by Gumball, and a few funny little detailed scenes and things like that, before Darwin finally groans and relents and agrees. The two then proceed to start making their plans for their adventure, and gather up the things that they might need in order to get there safely and easily. After packing up the rest of their things and waiting for night to arrive, they both wind up sneaking out of the house and proceeded to start skateboarding down to where the old home was at. Upon arrival, the two then make their way inside of the house and begin to look around the area for anything particularly interesting. Darwin doesn't really seem to find anything that well made, and then proceeds to tell Gumball that he's starting to get a little bit freaked out and has a bad feeling about this place and that he wants to leave. Gumball tells him that he could go if he wanted to, but he was going to stay and check the place out a bit further. And also sit there and call Darwin a chicken when he came back. Darwin, not only being the good kid that he was, but also wanting to avoid any kind of harassment or things like that from Gumball, decided against pretty much leaving his brother alone in the house and continues to follow Gumball around the place. That is until they manage to reach the top floor of the house and walk up to a large black door. Gumball, without any question, goes to open it, and inside of said door were 4 large-looking men. Actually, scratch that. They look more like giant gnomes with deformed faces. The head gnome immediately notices this, and all 4 of them start to chase Gumball and Darwin around the house in a Scooby-Doo-like fashion. That is until Gumball winds up getting his shirt stuck on one of the loose boards of the wall, connected by a nail. He tries to call out for Darwin for help, but at this point, Darwin had already left the house, leaving Gumball with the 4 men. Gumball tries to escape, but the 4 gnomes wind up grabbing him before he could escape, and then proceeds to drag him back into the room with them. Now, originally this video was going to pretty much involve Darwin waking up his mother Nicole, and Nicole would go into the house, beat the ever-living shit out of the 4 gnomes, save Gumball, and then that would be that. Like I said, nothing really that crazy, but a good start off. However, in this version that I wound up seeing, that didn't happen. In fact, up until around this point, everything was normal except for this one scene. The actual scene itself was actually a lot more poorly animated in this segment when it came up. Like I said before, I can't and won't go into graphic detail about it. But what I can say what happened was that it was shown what had happened with Gumball when he was inside the room, with the gnome characters. The main gnome proceeded to beat the hell out of Gumball before he and the other gnomes violated him. That's about the most safe kind of way I can say it, without going into much disgusting detail. But they did that. Why they did it? I don't know. Why was it included into the scene? I don't know. One thing I can certainly say was that I was practically retching during that entire thing. And for anybody wondering, yes, it was all uncensored, and yes, there was a lot of screams going on in the episode that played through it. Which, as much as I hate to have to say this, sounded... how do I put this? It sounded as if it were something from a video. Specifically a recording of some sort. The final conclusion of the video involved Gumball pretty much being left in the room alone, completely violated and without any clothing, while the gnomes left the house and fled the scene before Nicole and Darwin made their way into the house. And with that, the episode pretty much ended right then and there. No final conclusion, nothing. It just ended with that. When I saw this video, as you would have expected, I was about as disgusted could be. I tried on numerous occasions proving to the officers and even the detectives that that wasn't what the original video was. Hell, I even wind up showing them the actual video on my laptop that I had saved. Guess what? The fuckers didn't believe me, and I was brought back to my cell where I stayed there until my hearing. I won't bore any of you with what happened during this specific case, but what I can certainly say was that the odds were definitely not in my favor for this trial. Not only did I manage to get 5 months in juvenile hall for my actions, supposedly, but all the so-called evidence for this child endangerment things and things like that were actually believed, despite the fact that my original video was used as evidence against that. Oh, and to make matters even worse, I wound up getting put on the sex offender registry. For life. Not for a temporary period of time, and there was nothing that I could do about it. My lawyer had tried so hard, so freaking hard, to try and prove my innocence. And I thank him greatly to this day. Unfortunately, my parents had wound up firing him afterwards. specifically my dad, but still. After those long few months in jail, my dad had finally came and picked me up. He let me know on what was going on while I was in there. Turns out, Cartoon Network had wound up getting notified about the whole incident, and not only had been served a letter, basically a cease and desist letter saying that I had not only been blacklisted from the animation industry and their company, but they had also managed to get in contact with other industries and things like that. So basically, I was completely out of any remote kind of animation work if I wanted to do it. And because of the fact that I was falsely put on the registry, I could not find myself a job any longer. So I had to rely officially on government handouts after what had happened. But even then, that was very difficult. But the worst part about it was the fact that the companies themselves, even the ones that that were not even involved with this, decided to sue me. Sue my family as well. However, due to the fact that I was still a minor at the time, I was 16, my parents were the ones who were practically forced to pay the debt until I turned 18. I honestly wish I could end this all off with a happier note, because I know that this post has been nothing more but a depressing mess, and kind of ridiculous depending on who or what is watching, reading, or listening to this. Unfortunately, I can't. Because of this event, my parents had to sell their house, and we had to move into the cheapest RV park that we could find that would provide us with something. Although, we were lucky, but even then we wound up having to live in an old FEMA trailer that has been broken down, but it was still somewhat livable. My father, who was planning on originally retiring soon after when I turned 18, had to wind up going back to his old job and completely and utterly forget about sitting there and retiring because of the incident, and had to work over 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to pay the lawsuit payments and manage to somehow keep food on our table at the same time. My mother won't even talk to me anymore, much less even breathe in my direction. While she hasn't said it to my face, I could tell in her eyes that she truly believes that I'm guilty about what I did. It doesn't matter what I say, it doesn't matter what I do. No matter what will happen, she considers me a monster. A vile, disgusting monster. And there's no way I could even change her mind. I've tried, but it hasn't worked. As for my drawing, I quit it permanently. I deleted all of my social media accounts with my work, closed down my accounts, deleted my YouTube channel with all my artworks and animations on it, burned all the drawn work that I had in my sketchbooks. Hell, I even wound up burning all the colored pencils and markers and things. And then lastly, wound up donating my drawing tablet to my local Goodwill to be sold somewhere else. Basically, my life is pretty much over at this point. I have absolutely nothing to fall back on, and I think that's pretty much going to wind up staying that way for the rest of my life. I guess my final words on this little post here would pretty much be to whoever it was that did this. In fact, this pretty much goes a nice little message for that person, or that fucker or fuckers who did this. I truly hope that you get everything going to you. I hope that you die a painful death and you realize that you not only ruined a good opportunity for somebody who was aspiring to become an animator, but you forever destroyed the lives of myself, my family, and multiple other individual artists and the like, permanently. Absolutely permanently. Because you, whoever you are, you sick fucking monster, decided to sit there and insert your little disgusting thing in there that wound up getting me jail time for something I didn't even do. And I swear to fucking God that if I ever find you, if I even remotely see you near me, I will make sure of it. I swear, I will make sure of it that you die where you stand. I don't care if I go to prison. You will be dead by the time I'm done with you. So if I were you, I'd stay the fuck away from me as much as you possibly can, you disgusting monster. Even now, after everything, I've been still trying to do what I possibly can to get my life back in order. I even managed to somehow hire a private attorney and a private investigator. Hopefully, sooner or later, things will get fixed up. And everything will be fixed for me. Although, I highly doubt that'll ever happen.
In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horror-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.